words we share with one another as we center in this time and place. We gather as a spiritual community. As a collective, committed to sharing our quest for meaning, we gather. We're here with our questions and our doubts, our fears and our hopes, our joys and our sorrows. In the midst of all that life is, we come here together to deepen our capacity to celebrate diversity, inspire compassion, make a difference in the world, and engage life with spiritual depth. Above us are the stars. Deep in the core of the earth is fire. Within us is the light of life. We come here with each other to nurture all that gives radiance to our spirits. We come to seek wisdom in stories and songs, in words and silences, that which we find within us and between us and among us and beyond us. We gather in the presence of light in our quest for more light. When we come together in our many and varied ways, we pray. We find ways to strengthen our intentions, to deepen our commitment to live more faithfully to the values that inspire us, the values that shape us, the values that frame the way we want to be in the world. And so together, we offer these words as our prayer. We are here to cultivate a spiritual life, to sense its potential in our yearnings, to find its healing in community, to seek its depths in wisdom, ancient and new. We come to seek ways to live and love deeply, to be inspired by the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. We bring us into a new consciousness. We bring our understandings, our openness and our fear, our joy and sorrow. May we awaken to the wisdom that calls us to engage life with spiritual depth. May it be so. Whenever we gather, one of the music makers in this room is the fountain. The sound of water in a conversation with rock. In the city in which we live, core to our identity is that we are perched on the banks of the North Saskatchewan River. In so many ways, we're reminded of the primalness of water in our lives. And for each of us, there's been some significant relationship, perhaps, with a body of water. It might be a river, it might be an ocean, it might be a stream, it might be a slough. But we have a relationship with these places that have been part of our lives and that in some way have been our teachers. So I want to invite us on this summer Sunday to take a moment to reflect on those places, those bodies of water that have been significant in our lives, and to place the names that we in our humanity have given to them to distinguish them from others, to place their name and to say perhaps in just a few words what's been important about that body of water for us. I've had all week to think about it, so I'll start. For me, it's the Restigouche River, the river that was the river on which my childhood was shaped, and it was the river in which I learned to swim.
An important, I wouldn't say body of water, is a spring on the farm that my father bought in 1964.
So I'm very grateful to Wabamun Lake, and that means in Cree, Mere, Wabamun Lake. Hi.
So we have so many stories that we could share, and we all have a name of a body of water that we cherish. So I'm going to invite us to take a moment on, I'm going to run a little timer, and we're going to say into the circle the name of that body of water. So I'm going to give us a little timer of 3, and then you're going to speak it from your heart, the place that you're thinking of that is a body of water that you've had a relationship with and that you hold this day. We pour this water as we hold these places where water meets land, where water carves its path, where water nourishes us, where water reminds us of our connection, where water has been for us one of our great spiritual teachers. And we sing about a river. I'm reading a short narrative piece from Mary Oliver in her publication West Wind. Her advice about what to do when you meet the rapids in life. You're young, so you know everything. You leap into the boat and begin rowing. But listen to me. Without fanfare, without embarrassment, without any doubt, I talk directly to your soul. Listen to me. Lift the oars from the water and let your arms rest, and your heart, and your heart's little intelligence. And listen to me. There is life without love. It's not worth a bent penny or a scuffed shoe. It's not worth the body of a dead dog 9 days unburied. When you hear a mile away and still out of sight, the churn of the water as it begins to swirl and roil, fretting around the sharp rocks, when you hear that unmistakable pounding, when you feel the mist on your mouth and you sense ahead the embattlement, the long falls plunging and steaming, then row. Row for your life toward it. This is the insight of a contemporary poet. So many of the stories we have about Jesus of Nazareth are stories that are attributed to him as having told, often parables. But we also have stories that are parables about him. And this is one of those kinds of stories, a story as so many are set, beside that body of water that has so many different names in our text. It is the Sea of Galilee, Lake Gennesaret, Sea of Tiberias. And this is one of those stories that comes to us from that setting. Once while Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, a crowd was pressing in on him to hear what he had to say, and he saw 2 boats there on the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them, and they were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore, and then he sat down and he taught from the boat. And when he finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets." But Simon said, "Teacher, we've worked all night and we've caught nothing. But if you say, we'll let down our nets." When they'd done that, they'd caught so many fish their nets were beginning to break. When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. In this story our tradition has passed down to us from the 1st century. May It was July 16 years ago that we first moved to South Cooking Lake. And in our early years there, our neighbors had docks that they put out in the spring. A few had small sailboats, and others of us canoed and kayaked on the lake. And we loved being visited by the pelicans and the herons in those first summers we spent in our new home. But as the lake has become more shallow, the docks stay piled on the shore. And it's now mostly the return of ducks and gulls and red-winged blackbirds that we await and welcome every spring. And yet, even with an ever-shrinking lake, the Arctic swans still stop over every spring and fall. And somehow each year they find the deeper parts of the lake on which to congregate for a few days of rest in their long-winged migrations. And their gatherings are not discreet affairs. There's no mistaking their arrival. They don't just quietly slip in and out of town. Their lively conversations are broadcast over the lake, creating our two noisiest parties that our community hosts every year. They arrive in the great work of their life. Some are young, some are old. All of them undertaking the long migration that generations before them have taken and generations after them will take. Each generation being driven by that old instinct, but also having to adapt to an ever-changing environment. When I see them each year, they're in one of their places of pause as they stop to find what they need to continue the great work of their lives. And it seems to me this place of convening is one of the places where they find nurture and nutrition. They find communion with each other. They find what they need to carry on. Having dispersed from their formation in flight, in the best sense of the word, they congregate. They gather in a community. And if their vocalizations are any indication, it's just as important that they meet each other as that they meet their need for food. And we congregate in this place in much the same way. We come together to pause in the midst of all that our life is, to reflect on the work of our lives, to find comfort, to find courage for the challenges we meet in our migrations, to find nurture for all that sustains us in what life requires of us. And in the pause of our congregating, we equip each other to once again take flight, to continue to be about our journey, to unfold in the great work of our lives. Among those swans every year, I see surfers, I see swimmers, I see divers. Some of them just surfing the water, trying to get landed or airborne. Some of them swimming with such grace and beauty. Others of them upturned, giving us not their best side, while their long neck is diving deep in search of something to satisfy their hunger. And among my own species, I find surfers and swimmers and divers. I find within myself a surfer, a swimmer, and a diver. There are times that we want desperately just to stay on the surface of things, just to move through time as though we were ticking off things on a list, feeling our sense of accomplishment, things we've managed to do, our efficiencies, our achievements. Sometimes we stay on the surface of things, choosing not to know, choosing not to get involved, choosing not to feel too deeply, choosing not to get pulled under by anything, accepting what we see and hear as the sum of what is, avoiding the deep at all cost. And there are times we're swimmers. We're meeting the demands and the responsibilities and the beauties and wonders of life with our best skill and our best effort. We're enjoying the times of ease. We're moving with the tide and accepting the current of life. And we're going with the flow. We're not resisting the current of where time is taking us. And there are times that we have to be divers. When life pushes us to go deeper, to refuse to accept the superficial, to look for what's beyond, to question our assumptions and our answers, things that have satisfied us in the past, to be immersed in some need the world has of us, to let ourselves feel deeply and think deeply and live from the depths of the mystery of something greater, to live soulfully, not selfishly. And maybe that's the lesson that's set on the shore of that lake. Maybe it isn't a lesson about fishing at all. Maybe it's more like a diving lesson. Maybe it's more about learning how to put out into the deep, about how to live in the deep end of life. In this very unconventional classroom, this very unorthodox and unauthorized teacher draws a crowd to the beach, not for a barbecue or a bonfire, but for a lesson about life. And in the world of the story, when the crowd gets too large, he just helps himself to a boat that isn't being used so they can see him better and he can make use of the good acoustics of talking on water. No one seems too disturbed by his boat lifting, and he doesn't explain or apologize to the owner. Instead, he proceeds to offer fishermen fishing advice. Or maybe it wasn't advice about how they made their living. Maybe it was about how they were living, about sticking to the safe shore, not making too many waves, not taking any risks, skimming the surface of living, just making a living, but refusing to put out into the deep. And in the world of this story, when they do venture into the deep, something happened for them out there in that deep place. Something changed their dreams and their hopes and their ambitions. Something came of that chance meeting with a stranger on the shore. Something sighted them for a new dimension in their lives. And the way the story ends, from now on, the deep place for them was no longer out in the midst of the sea. The deep place was in the depths of life itself, in the depths of the needs around them and within them, in the depths of relationship they would cultivate with each other and their teacher, in the depth of their relationship with poverty and inequity, their relationship with land, with those who worked it and those who owned it, their relationship with freedom and the power of the empire, their relationship with the religious authorities whose shallow engagement with their community's real need became something they spent the rest of their lives critiquing and offering an alternative. It's unavoidable that life calls us into deep water. Sometimes it's a disease that takes us there. Sometimes it's an addiction. Sometimes it's the reality of our mortality. Sometimes it's the loss of someone we love. Sometimes it's unspeakable tragedy or breathtaking beauty. Sometimes it's utter failure that takes us there. Other times it's unimaginable good fortune, but somewhere, sometime, we're each taken to the deep. One of the spiritual needs for our time is a need to become equipped for living in the deep end. For living as though we're part of something more than our short lifetime. Living for more than ourselves and our family and our friends. Living the important questions, moving beyond the superficial to meet each other in ways that are transforming. To discover the wisdom that we can only find if we'll put out into the deep need of our world and the deep need we have for connection to life, to each other, to the sacred energy in which we live and move and have our being. Everywhere we turn, life invites us to connect. Our inboxes are full of invitations to be friends on Facebook, to tweet, to chat, to blog, to text. We live in a world of contacts and networks while our spirits are starving for communion. We have encounters when what our spirits long for is engagement. We have acquaintances when what our soul longs for is accompaniment. Maybe we congregate with each other in gatherings like this because we're hungry for more than contact. We're hungry to meet each other in the deep end, in the depths of life, hungry for those times and places in our lives where we are forever changed and changing by our experience of each other and by our experience of the sacredness in which our lives are immersed. That ritual that I witness twice a year with the swans reminds me of our need for those places of deep meeting where we're summoned beyond contact into communion, where we're summoned again to engage life with spiritual depth, where the deep in us is opening to the deep need of the world and the deep mystery of life. On this summer morning, we could do well to take advice from the swans, to pause for rest, to congregate in order to commune, to not be afraid to dive, to surround ourselves with beauty, to find where it is that life asks us to immerse ourselves in bringing the fullness of who we are to the world's deepest need of us. We take this moment to reflect on living in the deep end. I also want to talk about one of the unique gifts that our community offers Edmonton, and more than Edmonton. We have a commitment with one another to be exploring an expansive spirituality. One of our opportunities to do that is coming in Labor Day weekend, September 1 to 3. We are hosting in this community a conference by the name of Ever Wonder. Ever wonder what our lives might look like if they were organized around our spiritual values rather than around a set of beliefs? Ever wonder about what it is that we can bring to the world that is hungry for living in the deep end? An opportunity to gather Friday evening in a spiritual gathering with music and poetry and conversation with one another, an opportunity to gather all day Saturday and Sunday, a series of afternoon sessions, workshops, and panels that you will find engaging, opportunity to hear Greta Vosper speak on Saturday morning and again on Sunday afternoon. There are brochures on the foyer table. You do need to register for the conference, and our registration deadline is coming up at the end of this month. So please, if you're planning to attend the weekend, get your registration in. That will help us with catering count and other numbers that we need. And if you're not able to join us for the whole weekend, consider joining us for our spiritual gathering on Sunday morning and for a free public lecture that Greta Vosper will offer at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And then also an opportunity to engage a panel discussion that will follow that as well. So please have a look at those brochures, pass them to others in your life that you think might be interested in this opportunity. And it's one of the programs that we celebrate, that we have the opportunity to host. Folk are coming from Charlottetown, from Saskatchewan, from Medicine Hat, across the country. So please come and meet other seekers, and we have the opportunity to host those who are coming, seeking to engage life with spiritual depth. This is our opportunity to sing a tune that has been in our lives a long time for many of us, to sing it with some new lyrics that Scott Kearns has gifted us with. Scott will be here for the Ever Wonder Conference as well. We sang his piece, Deep, Deep and Still, earlier today. We've sung other pieces of music by him. And so we sing these words together as we contemplate living in the deep end. We place this table in our midst as a great metaphor for the table of life, the feast of existence, the adventure to which we are each called to live. This is a table where, like countless before us, we honor the life that is within us in all its wholeness and brokenness, in its human strength and in its frailty. It is a table at which we gather and we break bread in celebration of the life that flows out of our depths, strengthening our compassion, broadening our hope, converging our common need. This is the table where we pour a cup in celebration of the gifts of life that flow in all that is sacred, that flow from our challenges, that flow from the revolution of love that comes when we meet life head on. We come to this table as a symbolic way of acknowledging our hunger for communion, communion with the natural world, communion with the energy that we have created in our cities and in our towns, symbolic of all the places that life invites us to meet one another in the depths of who we are, in all that we seek. So we come to share a simple piece of bread in a common cup as a way of reminding ourselves that we come together in search of ways that we meet one another in the thick and in the thin of life. We come to this table where we're all welcome. You don't need to be a member of this or any church to be welcome at this table. You don't need to be one way or another. You don't need to believe this or that. We come as we are, seeking to engage life fully and deeply, seeking to be inspired, to live more truly and compassionately. Come and share bread for your journey and the cup of our deep humanity. One of my patron saints, his name is Frederick Buechner, said that vocation is the place where your deepest need intersects with the world's greatest need. We go to find those intersections. There are no one place, they are many. And when we find them, we find the sacredness of the deep end.